We're going to dedicate the class to Eliyahu Ben Yael. Should have immediate recovery and a refuah shlema, good health. And to anyone who needs refuah and good health also should be included. We are in Parashat Vayeshev. And I want to talk about something very important today, because all of us, as one, find ourselves in moments in our life where we really need a lot of power and help from Hashem. There's a hard challenge, or even worse than that, there's a great temptation to do something. And I know I'm about to do something that is not good. I know in my mind, this is not good what I'm about to do, but I can't take this temptation. And I'm not talking about buying a cookie. I'm talking about something that I know that I'm not going to be standing in this temptation. I'm saying, Hashem, please help me pass this test. I don't want to fail here. And sometimes it can be stealing, it can be cheating, it can be in a very vendetous way hurting somebody. I know I'm about to hurt this person if I now say this and that, and it can come in many different ways. Each one has their own temptation, and I know it's not good. There's no question here. I know the situation is not good. I know if I open up my mouth now, it will hurt that person, or if I do a certain action, somebody will suffer from that. But nevertheless, the heart can't hold the temptation. And sometimes, I mean not always, but I have this deep and inner request from Hashem, Hashem, give me some help here. I don't want to fail here. Now where do you bring the power to do so? Different question is, how do I get to a point that I can acknowledge that what I'm about to do is bad? That's a whole different thing. But nevertheless, if you have a little bit of common sense, you know when what you're about to do is not good. But where do I bring this power to be able to stand in front of the Yetzer Hara? Now, usually how the Yetzer Hara will work, he will work in two levels, or he will come and attack you in two ways. The first one is that the Yetzer Hara will diminish the severity of your action you're about to do. It's not that bad. Everybody steals. You're worrying about stealing? Everybody steals. You're worrying about saying Lashon Hara? Everybody's talking Lashon Hara about that person. So another one. So the Yetzer Hara will make the severity of the sin not so big. It's okay, it's not so bad. Hashem will forgive you. You're a good person. The second thing that the Yetzer Hara will come and attack you in is that he will tell you you're too weak to stand against this desire. He will tell you straight out, you're not going to stand this nisayon. You'll fail anyways. Might as well fail now. No point of trying to fight it another day or two. Down the line, it's just a matter of hours of days and you're going to sin anyways. So just start now. Why wait? Why put a fight? This comes usually when the sin is something that you really get a lot of pleasure out of. And that's how I will tell you, anyways you're going to sin. So just do it today instead of doing it tomorrow. Now, why are we talking about this right now? Because in this week's parasha, we learn about the nisayon, the test that Yosef had. And the Talmud says that there was never a man ever in history, man or woman, I mean the Talmud says Adam. Adam is human, but there was never a man or a woman in history that ever had to fight a challenge or a temptation like Yosef had to do with the wife of Potiphar. Now, that's what the Talmud says about Yosef HaTzadik, that there was never anybody in history that had to fight such a challenge. Now, why is that Yosef? Well, he's the only one in the history that had to fight a challenge or a temptation to do something. Thousands of people, if not millions of people. Why does the Talmud choose to say only Yosef HaTzadik? So, the reason why is because of two things. First of all, Yosef had nothing to lose. He wasn't, technically nobody knew he's even alive. His father thought that he died. His father sat Shiva on him. His brothers sold him to a convoy of Egyptians that they didn't know whatever happened to him. For all they knew, he was somewhere along the way died. Nobody knew of his existence. He didn't have a Teudat Zehut number, not a social security number. He wasn't in the list of the citizens. He as if he didn't exist. Nobody knew that he exists. He's to the knowledge of the world, he doesn't exist. So what is he got to lose? It's not like a person that chas v'shalom, if he sins, it will go against his reputation, and chas v'shalom will haunt him for the rest of his life. I mean, a lot of the times we stop ourselves from sinning because what would be the result? People in the community are going to talk about me. I can do a sin, chas v'shalom. If it's severe sin in forbidden relations, I'll get divorced. It's going to ruin my life. If I steal something, it can ruin my reputation, will be on my record. He stole. So Yosef has nothing to lose. Nobody knows him. He has no records. He's a nobody. Who cares? It's just another child, another kid. He was a kid. They're just sins with a woman. Big deal. Thousands of people do it. The second thing is, why the Talmud says that nobody ever had a challenge like him, is because this challenge lasted for 22 years. It wasn't something that was a one-time thing. Yosef HaTzadik was a very handsome man, very desired. In many places in the commentary says that he would constantly get approached by beautiful women when he would walk in the street. They would throw things at him to get his attention. He was like I don't know what's the right word to use, but he was like yeah, you said that. Yeah, but yeah, he was like yeah, you said that too. See, I'm on the air. I can't say these words, but nevertheless, he was a very attractive young man, and needless to say, that women would just throw themselves at him. He was like, I don't know, like a Justin Bieber or whatever. I don't know, some superstar. This test was not a one-time thing. 22 years. He would get emails and text messages and selfies, and everywhere he would go, and he was like a celebrity. So the Talmud, when it says that nobody ever went through a nisayon like Yosef HaTzadik, is first of all, he had nothing to lose. And this is one big thing, and if you really think about it, one big thing that stops us from sinning is what would people say? And a lot of the times I will stop myself because I know this is not going to be good for business. It's not going to be good for my reputation. It's not going to be good for my status. And we hold ourselves because I don't want people to start talking. And the next one, Yosef HaTzadik, it was an ongoing test. Now, Yosef HaTzadik was called a tzaddik, as we know. And in the entire Tanakh, only two people were called a tzaddik, which is, of course, Noach, Ish Tzaddik Bedorotav, and Yosef was called Yosef HaTzadik. Up until today, we call him Yosef HaTzadik. Many times I've said that many people in our history, our heroes, they have a title. Moshe Rabbeinu, and Shmuel Hanavi, David HaMelech, Aaron HaKohen. I mean, how many people have come with titles? Avraham Avinu. So, Adam Harishon. This Yosef is a tzaddik. Well, there was no other tzaddikim in our history that Yosef gets the title tzaddik. So the prophet Amos says that there's a few sins that the Kadosh Baruch Hu will never forgive us. And one of them is the selling of Yosef HaTzadik by his brothers. So, and how does he says that? Mechirat HaTzadik. The selling of the tzaddik. That's where we get, it doesn't say in the Torah, Yosef HaTzadik, by the way. Where do we get this Yosef HaTzadik? From the verse in the book of Amos, where he says that Hashem doesn't forgive some of the sins He will never forgive, and one of them is the selling of the tzaddik. So we see that Yosef gets the title of the tzaddik. And comes a question, how did Yosef HaTzadik was able to fight such a temptation? So Rashi says that when he was about to do the sin with this woman, he saw the image of his father. The image of his father revealed himself to him, and he saw the face, and he turned around and ran away. Rashi says, Ra'a Dyukano shel Aviv. Dyukan is like not necessarily a statue, but the image, the picture. Now, how many times you're about to sin and you see an image of somebody and you're thinking of that somebody. You know, when I was much younger, and especially younger in my tshuva, I found a way how to stop me from sinning. I would think of my kids. And I would say, if I sin, I affect my kids. And you know, a parent, when he thinks of his child, he will make him stop to do a lot of things. So I would think of two things. I would think of my mom, and I would think of my kids. And I would say, I don't want to make a sin now, it will hurt them. If it will hurt them in any type of a way, I don't want to do it. And that was a good trick. And where did I learn that? Because yes, Yosef, what stopped him from sinning? He saw the image of his father. And he got full of emotions. He loved his father very much. They were very close, Yosef and Yaakov. And he stopped. He didn't do the sin. Comes a big question. Okay, so he saw the face of his father. Big deal. So what? That's what stops you from the temptation of the image of your father? Why didn't he see the image of his mother? Or whatever. What stopped him by seeing the face of his father? That Rashi says that's what stopped him from doing the sin. So the Talmud in Tractate Sotah also presents that question. First of all, so what if he saw the face of his father? Big deal. What do I need to take from that? Not only that, the question is, what did Yosef saw in the face of Yaakov that changed everything? What did he see? Dafka in the face that changed it. So the simple explanation is that when he saw the face of his father is to remind him what he's supposed to be. You know, we have as a nation a custom, it's in many different groups, that we put pictures of tzaddikim or our rabbis on the walls. Why? Your eyes should see your teachers. Why? To remind me what I'm supposed to be. If I'm in my house and I have a picture here of the Ben Ish Chai and I don't know what people, I put the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Baba Sali, Arav Kaduri, they put the pictures of the tzaddikim, it's to remind me, whoa, this is how I'm supposed to be. How many times you're in your home and you want to do something and you see the picture of the tzaddik and you're like, oh yeah, I can't, he's looking at me. So the Talmud says, yeah, so he saw the face to remind him, whoa, what are you doing? You think your father would do such a thing? Why would you do such a thing? But nevertheless, what's so significant in the face of Yaakov Avinu that scared Yosef off? So there's a beautiful commentary brought by the Khatam Sofer where he asks a question. Forget about the face of Yaakov. What's so special about the face of Yaakov that scared Yosef? It's a bigger question. How come only Yosef got this revelation of a face and nobody else? Dafka Yosef, he gets a visit in his mind of the face of Yaakov. How come Yehuda didn't get that face when he went to go to sin with Tamar? What's the difference? Yosef gets the visit and Yehuda doesn't? Why didn't all the brothers get a vision of the father before they threw Yosef to the pit? And I can ask this question now for a few generations. Why didn't he get? Only Yosef gets a vision of the face of his father before he's about to sin? Very good question. This is presented by the Khatam Sofer. The answer can be found in the Talmud, specifically in Tractate Shabbat, page 49, where it says, Yaakov had a reason why to save Yosef specifically. In the Hebrew it says interes. I'm sure there's some type of a word equivalent to that in English. Sometimes when I do something, I have an interest here. Not an interest, I have what would be the right word to say? I have something I benefit from it, so I do that. So, what? Not an investment, but a motive, yeah, an ulterior motive. The Talmud says that there was an ulterior motive to save specifically Yosef. The Talmud says, "Haya interes." Him specifically. Everybody needs to be saved, but Yosef HaTzadik specifically. Why Yosef HaTzadik? What's so special about him that from Shamayim they made sure that he was saved? So the answer can be found in the Talmud, where it's talking about the Choshen HaMishpat. You know, there was a breastplate that the Kohen HaGadol used to wear on him. And on the breastplate was the Urim V'Tumim. There was all the stones, and there was all the letters of the alphabet on it. And they would ask a question, and you know the breastplate, the letters, it would start changing the colors where the stones were, and they would read what the message said, and they knew answers. That's what they used to do. Now, the Talmud says there's two opinions what was written on the breastplate. Because we know the breastplate, they had 12 stones. If you remember, 2 weeks ago when we learned it in the Zohar class, when it says that Yaakov placed all the stones around his head, then what are these stones that he placed around his head? There was these 12 stones that later on went into the breastplate. It wasn't regular stones. Rather, it was the 12 stones of Avnei HaChoshen, and he selected them, he took them. And they served for him as a barrier, as a protection. The Talmud has two opinions. What was written on the breastplate? The first opinion says what was written was all the names of the fathers and all the names of the Shvatim. The names, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yehuda, Yosef, and so forth. All the names. Now, when it would be written the letters, it would take, let's say, they needed an Aleph, the Aleph of Avraham will shine. They needed a Lamed, then the Lamed of Levi will shine. That's one opinion. The other opinion is that it was the name of the actual stones, Sapir, and so forth. Now, the Khatam Sofer gives an unbelievable explanation why Yosef. Because if you're looking at the names of the fathers and the Shvatim, Yosef is the only one who has the letter Samech. Which means that if Yosef would sin, Yosef would go out of the list, and then there wouldn't be a Samech in Avnei HaChoshen. There would be missing a letter. Nobody in all the forefathers and all the tribes has the letter Samech. Now what would be? That if there isn't the names of the fathers and the tribes, then there would have to be the names of the stones. And which stone has the letter Samech? Sapir, sapphire. Which is not really sapphire, by the way. But nevertheless, I mean, in today's day, they say that sapphire is sapphire. It's a different stone. But nevertheless, so this is what the Khatam Sofer says. So there was a ulterior motive to save Yosef. Because if not, he would be out of the breastplate and that would cause a problem. Okay, very interesting explanation. Now, there's a much more deeper reason why Yosef HaTzadik gets an appearance by Yaakov Avinu. And the question is, what gives a young man the power to overcome the temptation of a gorgeous woman tempting him day after day after day, come and be with me? This is a young man. This is not like some 60-year-old guy that he's tired. This is a young man, nothing else to do, and he's working in this palace, and nobody's there, just him and this beautiful woman, and every day she's tempting him. Now, our sages say that he almost sinned. It's not that he was, that he told her from day one, I don't want to. He almost sinned. There was flirting going around and some smiling here and there, and he almost sinned. Now, it says that one time, that's what it says in the Torah, that every day she changed her clothes and she came and with all sorts of ways, feminine ways to tempt him. And at some point when she got too close to him, it says, Vayemaen. Vayemaen means that he's like a powerful, like, no! I mean, sometimes you can play the game till a certain line and then you back off. But the Torah uses the word Vayemaen. And Yemaen means like in a very powerful way to refuse. No! Now, interestingly, there are 4 times in the Torah the word Yemaen. And I don't know if the right translation for Yemaen is to refuse, but it signifies a very strong statement of I refuse. But, nevertheless, like I said, there are 4 times in the Torah where we find the word Vayemaen. 3 times in the book of Bereshit.
Is it Aramaic or Hebrew?
No, it's Hebrew. And 1 time in the book of Vayikra in Parashat Tzav. These are the 4 times that we find this word in the Torah. But comes a very interesting point, a commentary. I'm sure you've been to a shul once or twice and you heard when they read the Torah. When we read the Torah, there are simanim, how we read the words. It doesn't matter if it's Sephardi, Ashkenaz, it's called te'amim, the way how you present the word. In the 4 places where it has the word Vayemaen in the Torah, the siman, the ta'am, is the same ta'am, and it's called shalshelet. When you read it as sometimes you read the simanim in a different ways. Not going to start making now all the imitations, but some siman you'll read it as and then you know what I'm talking about. The trot in the reading of the Torah. The 4 times that it says the word Yemaen, it has the same ta'am. It's called shalshelet. Shalshelet is going like What does it mean? It wasn't when Yosef said Vayemaen. When you read it, we'll read it this week. It says Vayemaen. That's how we read it. It wasn't stop! It was like maybe. It was Shalshelet is something that going like that. I'm not sure. That's the same thing, like I'll give you another example. Where else does it say in the Torah about that? You know, this Shalshelet means I'm not sure. It's swinging from side to side. I'm not 100% sure. Where is the first time that we find this siman? With Lot. When Lot, the angels came and they told him run away from Sodom. So the same shalshelet is found in the word when he was vayitma'ameh. He didn't know if to go with the angels or not to go with the angels. That's the first time when we see it in the Torah. He didn't know. What, am I just going to leave? You're just telling me the world is going to be destroyed now, and I'm going to leave my business, my friends, my community, and you want me to go and live now in a cave with my daughters? He was not sure if to go or not to go, and at the end the angels just grabbed him. The second time that we find it in the Torah was with Eliezer when he went to get Rivka. And what happened with Eliezer? He knows that he has to go bring a daughter to Yitzchak, a woman to Yitzchak, and he's not sure if to do it or not. Why? Because he has a daughter, and he wants his daughter to marry Yitzchak. So he has to do the will of his master, but he doesn't want to. And he's swinging. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? This is called levatim, contemplations in my mind. Should I do it? Should I not do it? So sometimes there are situations that you say something, but it's not what you want. And this is what's called echad barosh, echad balev. Sometimes you say something, but it's not what you want. So we see that with Eliezer, with Lot, with Yosef, it wasn't a straight no. Yosef didn't just say, leave me alone. Vayemaen. He was contemplating, should I go? Should I go in? Should I not go in? It wasn't such a powerful, no, I don't want to be with you. So our sages say, Yosef kim'at chata. He was debating. And you know what? If the image of his father wouldn't show up, he would sin, probably. And can you blame him? No. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions, sin in the same thing, sin in this temptation every day. But nevertheless, our sages say, whoa, don't, we give him a lot of credit, but don't think for 1 second he didn't think about it. There was a lot of debating in his mind. Now, our sages say, how do we know that he almost sinned? Okay, now you're giving him first you gave him a credit that he didn't. Now you're saying that he almost sinned. No. How do we know that he almost sinned? Because it says in the Torah very clearly that when he came home that day, Ba la'asot melacha. It doesn't say, actually, it says Ba la'asot melachto. Sorry. It has to say Ba la'asot melacha. Melacha is his job. Now he worked there. The Torah says that if he would come to do his job, then the Torah should have said, Ba la'asot melacha. He came to do his job. But rather it says, Ba la'asot melachto. He came to do his job. Meaning that he came home, he knew that the boss is out of town, he knew that everybody's outside working, it's just me and her. There's nobody in the home. There's no cameras. 4,000 years ago they didn't have cameras, security cameras. There's no smartphones or anything else. Nobody can track him. So he came home and he's like, that's a good time to come to the home today to do my job. So our sages learn that because the Torah says Ba la'asot melachto instead of Ba la'asot melacha, He came to do his job instead of doing the job that he has to do, which whatever it was, they're cleaning or fixing or whatever it was. So nevertheless, our sages come and say, nevertheless, it was a great move that he didn't do it, but just don't think for 1 second he didn't have this going on in his mind.
So he was a Beinoni.
It doesn't matter right now, Beinoni, not a Beinoni. But why is it so important to the commentaries to show that Yosef almost sinned and that the sin would be huge? Why are we so focusing on the sin? How many people in the Torah sinned? And we don't see commentaries going after them. Okay, we're also going to read now that Yehuda sinned. Do you see any commentaries that are going against Yehuda? What? No, okay, no, sin, we all sin. There's not one even a tzaddik that cannot sin. They will not sin. So, the explanation why the commentaries are so, it's important to them to greaten the sin of Yosef. The answer is brought by Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu says that the entire Torah can be summarized into one pasuk. Ki karov elecha hadavar meod beficha ubelevavcha la'asoto. Because this action is very close to you in your heart and in your mouth to actually do it. What does that really mean? What does this verse mean? That every action that I can fail in, the Torah will give me the tool how to not do it. The Torah is not a book of history. The Torah is not a book of parables, and the Torah is not some fairy tale. The Torah is a guide. That's why it's called Torah. Because the word in Hebrew, Torah, is the same word in Hebrew, hora'ah, to teach. Meaning that every story, every verse, everything that we read in the Torah is a teaching for me how to deal with situations. It's not a history book. When you're reading about all these historical facts, that's very nice to know our history. It's not even a fraction of the actual history. We have history written in the Midrashim, that we know all the history. Look at Abraham Avinu. The Torah just starts talking about him when he's 75 years old. How much do we know about Abraham Avinu? Not a lot. Moshe Rabbeinu, our hero, do we know anything about him? We know when he was born. Suddenly, whoop, he's 18 years old. Whoop, suddenly he's 80 years old. Where was he? 62 years. Our hero. I want to know some history about my hero. Where did he grow? Which university he went to? Who did he marry? What was his hobbies? Do we know anything about Moshe Rabbeinu? From the age of 18, when he ran away from Mitzrayim, till the age of 80, do we know anything about him? We don't know nothing about him from the Torah. But look in the Midrashim and we know a lot about him. He was a king in the land of Cush for 10 years. He was in jail for 10 years. He did many, many things. He had a startup. So, that's of course my chidush. But nevertheless, the Torah doesn't go into details because the Torah is not a history book. The Torah is a guide. So every action in the Torah is a guide. Because every action here is for me to teach me something in my own challenges, in my own path, in my own life. So the Torah is something practical. That's why you see that always when I talk, I say, what do you get something practical out of it? If you just got some story out of it, it's a waste of time. When I started learning Torah, I was like, I need to be practical here. I need to take anything that I learn and apply it. And if I don't apply it, then I'm wasting my time. So, the Torah says that even a tzaddik has a yetzer hara. That's one of the big points in the story. That, you know, in other cultures and in other religions, their tzaddik is 100% perfect. He's a saint. He's an angel. Whatever it is. We're not going to get into details of other faiths. But in our faith, in Judaism, our tzaddikim are humans. And they sin. David the Melech sinned. He's our king. Moshe Rabbeinu sinned. They all sin. The Torah is coming to tell you, our tzaddikim are human beings, and some of them choose to be a tzaddik. Yosef chose to be a tzaddik. Some of them are born a tzaddik. Abraham Avinu was born a tzaddik. But Yosef chose to be a tzaddik. So even a tzaddik has a yetzer hara. So if the tzaddik has a yetzer hara, so much more, so I have a yetzer hara. Now, comes another question here. Why was it so important to the commentaries to ruin, so to say, the name of the two tzaddikim that the Torah calls them tzaddikim, Noach and Yosef? With Noach, it says, Ish tzaddik bedorotav, a righteous man in his generation. All the commentaries come and say, Bedorotav, in his generation. If you would put him in the generation of Avraham Avinu, he wouldn't be a tzaddik. If you compare it to so-and-so, he wouldn't be a tzaddik. Yeah, the Torah just gave him credit. Why you have to? He's not a tzaddik. Same thing with Yosef. He overpowered and overcome this challenge. Why all the commentaries have to say, well, he almost did sin, and why can't you just say the person did something great? Why the commentaries have to put some bitterness in here? So, only to teach us that they were also not perfect. They got to the level of a tzaddik, but they were not perfect. They had to work on it. They specifically with Noach and Yosef, they chose to be a tzaddik. You think Noach had a problem sinning? Who would say anything? Everybody was wicked there. He could do whatever he wants. Same thing with Yosef. He was a nobody. Who knew who he was? They chose to be tzaddikim. It's basically saying both with Noach and with Yosef, there were a regular individual that chose to be a tzaddik. You can wake up now and say, you know what? I also want to be a tzaddik. Well, what stops me from being a tzaddik? A lot of power I need, but if you really put your mind to it, our sages say, "En davar omed bifnei haratzon." There's nothing can stand in front of your will. If a person now, any one of you, decides to be a tzaddik and you take it serious, no problem. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be a tzaddik. Yeah, it will take a lot of willpower. I know people that they stop drinking after many, many years. And they become sober for years. I know people that were addicted to crack, heroin, and then they make it. How can you fight that? That's a very small fraction. But obviously it can be done. I know people that 20, 30 years, they don't touch the drug. How do you do that? Strong willpower and the right tools. So if a person can overcome drugs, why can he become a tzaddik? If a person can stop his addiction, and there are thousands of them, why can I be a tzaddik? Anybody can be a tzaddik. So, what shows us how great they was the fact that they chose that they want to be a tzaddik. Now, really, when you're looking at it, Yosef didn't have it easy. Can you imagine the situation he's in? But nevertheless, he still chose to do something, and he was able to do it. Okay, so we understand that Yosef was able to fight his inclination, his desire, his lust. But we want to understand what was the secret behind the face of Yaakov when Yosef HaTzadik saw it. Sorry. What's the secret that if Rashi comes and say that Yosef stopped from sinning because he saw the image of his father, what's so great about it? What did he really see there? I told you already. When I became observant, if I was about to sin in something, I would right away think of my mom or my kids. I only had 2 kids then. I mean, that's how far it went. But I would think of my kids. I would actually think, no, just for the sake of my kids. I don't want to do anything. So, what was so powerful in the face of Yaakov that caused Yosef to be scared? So, there's a story. And this story happened to Levi Yitzchak from Berdichov. And we know that a lot of the great tzaddikim coming from the Hasidic world, they were able to annul prosecution against the generation. So there's a famous story that one time was a Yom Kippur. They had a big minyan in Berdichov, and all the people from all the villages would come in. They didn't have shuls in different villages, so everybody during the week or during the year would just pray by themselves. But a Yom Kippur, you travel to the big city so everybody can pray in a minyan. Okay, it was a very big minyan, all organized for Yom Kippur. Everybody's gathering there, and they're waiting for the tzaddik Levi Yitzchak from Berdichov to walk in. As he walks in, instead of going to the Omed to start praying, he goes to the corner to some farmer, and he tells him, "Are you from this and this city?" He tells him, "Yeah." He tells him, "Tell me, the paritz, the ruler, the governor of that city, what's with the dog?" So the farmer says, "Yeah, he had a dog." Yeah. Tells him, "Was that a regular dog?" He says, "No, that was a very expensive dog. It was a a very unique kind. They went far away to bring it as a custom-made dog, and it was a very expensive dog. And the tzaddik says, okay, very, very good, and what's with the dog right now? So the farmer says, well, one day the paritz usually would be like the rich person, the landlord that owns everything. He says, well, one day he woke up and he got a little bit angry and he shot the dog. Ooh, good, very good. He smiles and he goes up and starts praying. Everybody's like looking, what's going on here? Comes Motzei Yom Kippur, they approach the rabbi. No, what is going on? The dog, who cares about the dog? The whole prayer was waiting, the whole minyan. So the Tzaddik Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev says, let me tell you, a few months ago, there was a very bad decree against this entire town. Why? Because a poor person walked into this town and he started asking for food. Now everybody was poor in this town. So this person gave him an apple, that person gave him a crumb, that person gave him a piece of a potato, and barely was enough to feed him. Now finally, after the person was almost fainting from hunger, he happened to stand in front of the house of this landlord, this big paritz, who invited him and gave him a sandwich to eat and gave him some food. Now it became a very big decree in Shamayim. How could it be that all the Jews in that village didn't help the other Jew with food, and Dafka the paritz, he is the one who helped the Jew? So it was a very big decree in Shamayim. So Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev says, I had to find a way how to annul this decree. And how did I find the way? That person was so rich that he bought a dog for thousands and thousands of ruble, and one day he got upset and he just shot it. Meaning that he has so much money that this expensive dog is, it's small change. And therefore, if it was small change, then the little food that he gave to the poor person is nothing for him. And on the other hand, the poor Jews that barely had anything, they gave, people took a piece from their sandwich and gave it to the poor person. So it's a much greater act for somebody to give something that from them they don't have, something very small, than for a rich person to give a few sandwiches. It's almost like getting $100 from a billionaire and he gives $100 to charity. $100? You can give $100 million. Why are you giving $100? Same thing here. So Levi Yitzchak from Berditchev switched it around by saying for the millionaire, that little food that he gave is nothing, and on the other hand, the poor Jews that didn't have anything, for them to give half of their banana, that was a huge thing. And therefore he was able to annul the decree. Saying in other words, small actions make a huge difference. And this is something that we don't realize. And that's where the Yetzer Hara comes and tells me your action is worthless. That's where you have to stop the Yetzer Hara and says, no, it's not. This story comes to teach me that small actions make big difference. And my little action changing the entire world. Me, a little person, my action is worth anything. You know how many times people tell me I have a Yetzer Hara to do this, to do that. Not too long ago somebody came me, a man, and he calls me maybe 20 minutes before the sun goes down. He tells me I still didn't put tefillin on. Is it still too late? And I told him, no, you can still, before the sun goes down, you can still put tefillin on. I told him, why didn't you put tefillin? I don't want to put it like this, I have a Yetzer Hara. And he was like, I still don't want to put it. And I told him, you know what, still put the tefillin on, not for your sake, because your tefillin now can maybe bring the redemption. Rambam says, one little action can tilt the whole world to kaf zchut. I told him, your tefillin now, you have such a desire not to put tefillin for Klal Israel, for the entire nation. Because sometimes my little action will affect the entire city or the entire nation. So again, we're going to slogan it, we're going to put it on a sticker. Small actions make a big difference. And that's the story with Rabbi Yitzchak from Berditchev. That you have the ability with your little action to affect the entire world. And this is something that you really have to internalize if you have to take something out of this class, is sometimes you're about to do something bad, or you're contemplating if to do something good. If you would know that right now your little action will make a huge difference, that will allow you to do it, or to stop you, to prevent you from doing something bad. So the Talmud says, what was so important in the face of Yaakov? Let me tell you. This is a story from the Talmud, tracted Baba Batra, and it's talking about a certain rabbi. His name was Rabbi Bana. And his job was to walk around grave sites and to mark the graves. He used to call him mesamen kvarim. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you mark graves? So the priests can know where to go. Why do you think here in Tzfat all the graves are painted? I mean, there's many beautiful explanations for that. We're not going to get to this right now, but have you noticed that the graves are painted? To know where is a grave that a Kohen can go around. But nevertheless, this certain Rabbi Bana, his job was to mark graves. He would go around and mark them only for the reason, for the Kohanim, for the priest. A priest is not allowed to go next to a grave. He's not allowed to step on a grave. And sometimes, I don't know who's buried underneath me. But nevertheless, that was his job. And it says that one time he got to Hebron, and he got to Ma'arat HaMachpelah, and he's like, okay, I gotta mark the graves. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Ma'arat HaMachpelah. You don't really see the grave, by the way. What we see is not really the graves. The graves are much more below. What you see is some stone. Nevertheless, it's a holy place, and I'm not chas v'shalom as taking from the kedusha of the place, but we don't really see the graves. The graves are much more lower. But nevertheless, he got to Hebron, and he goes into Ma'arat HaMachpelah, and he goes to Avraham and Sarah, and he marks the grave. He goes to Yitzchak and Rivka, and marks the grave, and goes to Yaakov and Leah, and marks the grave. Then he's about to go into the cave, more in, to Adam HaRishon and Chava. Some heavenly force stops him and tells him, you're not allowed to see Adam's face. Oh, wow, I want to see how Adam HaRishon looks. And the Gemara says that the heavenly power that stopped him says, you have seen the image of the face of Yaakov, that's enough. If you've seen the image of Yaakov, then that's enough, you don't have to see the face of Adam HaRishon. And it says about Adam HaRishon, ראית דיוקנו של יעקב, ראית את דיוקנו של אדם. You saw the face of Yaakov, you saw the face of Adam HaRishon. Saying in other words, that the face of Adam HaRishon resembled the face of Yaakov. That Yaakov looked a little bit like Adam HaRishon. Now what does Yosef understand from that? Yosef understands when he sees the face of Yaakov, that he actually saw the face of Adam HaRishon, and he understands that if he's going to go to do that sin, he's arousing the sin of Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon did a very severe sin, Chet Etz Hadat, the sin of the tree of knowledge. So the Talmud tells us the face of Yaakov looked like the face of Adam HaRishon, and Adam HaRishon appeared to Yosef, and Yosef understood that if he is going to sin right now, he is going to bring back to life the sin of Adam HaRishon. Oh, that's a big responsibility. But he also understood that if he doesn't do the sin, he will do a rectification for the sin of Adam HaRishon, of the tree of knowledge. And he understands that in his hands right now, it's not only his desire or his punishment, it's the entire universe. The entire mankind is dependent right now on his decision. And he understood that a little sin, that it's a personal sin, will affect the entire world right now. So he gets scared. Now, what's the idea behind it? There is a book. The book is called Megalei Amukot. One of the most important books of Kabbalah we have out there. It's about a 500-year-old book. It was written by Rabbi Natan Shapiro. Nevertheless, very important book. And the whole book is 252 explanations on one verse in the Torah. 252 explanations, on one verse on the Torah, that a verse that can be found in Parashat Vayeshev. And the verse is Evra na be'artzecha. When Moshe Rabbeinu tells Hashem, please, let me pass in your land. Evra na be'artzecha. 250 explanations and commentaries on that verse that Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, please let me come into the land of Israel. In one of the explanations, it's talking about the sin of Adam HaRishon. That Adam HaRishon really, the sin of the tree of knowledge, it's not just one sin. It's the foundation and the source of the major three sins that caused the Beit HaMikdash to be destroyed. And the major three most powerful and destructive sins that we have out there, which is idol worship, bloodshed, and forbidden relations. That's the three sins that the first Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So really in Chet Etz Hadat, in the sin of the tree of knowledge, is the foundation and the source for all these other three sins. How exactly? So by the fact that Adam HaRishon listened to the snake and not to Hashem, that's idol worship. Saying in other words, I believe that there's another force, another form of something, that I listen to that and not to you. This is idol worship. Adam HaRishon listened to the snake and not to Hashem. Hashem told him, don't touch the tree. Don't eat from the tree. He didn't say don't touch. He said don't eat. Don't eat from the tree. So the fact that Adam HaRishon listened to the snake, that's idol worship. Why you believe somebody else? Then, when he ate from the tree, what was one of the main punishments? That Adam HaRishon brought death to the world. That's bloodshed. And not only that, since Adam HaRishon brought this sin, later on, of course, he divorced Chava, and then he got back to her, but nevertheless, that was the source of all types of forbidden relations. So the Adam HaRishon brought on the world death, idol worship, and forbidden relations in that sin. The same place in this book says that the three fathers did the tikkun for that. Avraham Avinu did the tikkun for idol worship by going and spreading the truth that there's one God around the world and converting everybody. So he did a rectification for idol worship. Yitzchak, how did he do a tikkun for murder, for bloodshed? That when he sent Esav to get him food, that what we read 2 weeks ago, he told him, please slaughter an animal. He didn't tell him, kill me an animal. He says, lech tishchat gdi, go and slaughter. By that, instead of killing the animal and the animal suffering, go and slaughter the animal, and that will be a rectification for bloodshed. And Yaakov did the rectification for forbidden relations by the fact that his first time that he ever had any type of marital relations was with Leah. You know, he was 84 years old when he had the first time that he had any contact with a woman. It says that the first drop that ever came out of Yaakov was with Leah. Reshit Oni, the first of all. So this is called mitato shlema, that all his kids were righteous and good and no problems in the bedroom. So he did the rectification for the forbidden relations. Now Yosef sees the face of Adam HaRishon, and he understands that the entire universe is depending on him. The whole world is depending on him. All the history, the future, everything. Because if he sins, he arouses the sin of Adam HaRishon.
Did he see the face of Adam HaRishon?
But that's exactly what we said now, that he saw the face of his father. Yeah. But the Talmud explains that Yaakov looked like Adam HaRishon. That when this Rabbi Bana in the Talmud that went to Hebron, he marked the graves of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. When he went to mark Adam HaRishon, the heavenly power, the heavenly voice says, no, you already saw Yaakov. Adam HaRishon looks exactly like Yaakov. Or Yaakov looks like Adam HaRishon. Therefore, when Yosef saw the image, he saw the image of Adam HaRishon. And he got so scared because he understood that if I'm sinning right now, entire mankind, the whole universe is going to be punished because of me. Excuse me, and vice versa. If I hold myself, I will bring peace and redemption to the world. So he understands how severe it is. Now, again, to explain it a little bit more, there's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. And we know the Baal Shem Tov was a great tzaddik, and one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov was known about was he was constantly happy. And there were times that the Baal Shem Tov was a little bit worried or sad, and everybody would get upset. What's going on? If he's now sad or worried, something's going on. So one time he was sitting and he was very worried. He had a face of, worried about something, and all his students were very upset. What's going on? If he's worried, maybe there's a big decree against the nation. And that was the real truth. There was a big decree. They were trying to make him laugh and tell him good things and nothing. He had a very worried face. And the story says that at some point a Jew walked in to the place, and suddenly the Baal Shem Tov became very, very happy. Oh, why would this simple Jew make the Baal Shem Tov very happy? So the Baal Shem Tov says, this Jew that just walked in, he was able to stand in front of a test that was so powerful that from the time of Akedat Yitzchak there wasn't such a test. The Akedat Yitzchak is when Avraham Avinu was tested to go and sacrifice Yitzchak. And the Baal Shem Tov says that Jew just faced a challenge and he was able to overcome a test that we didn't have such a test for so many generations. What was this test? That this Jew, a very, very simple Jew, he was a wood chopper. People needed to have pieces of wood to put in the furnace and to put in the oven, and that was his job. He would go chop wood, carry the wood, and sell the wood. But he was very, very poor, very simple. Everything was very, very minimum to the minimum. And the story says that one year was a very, very hard year. Now, as much as this person was very poor and everything would be to the minimum, there was one mitzvah that this holy Jew would never ever give up, and he would always take all of his money and buy the most beautiful etrog on Sukkot. And even though they barely had money, his clothes were torn, barely any food in the house, but on Sukkot he would buy the most beautiful etrog, and he would never give this up. One year, business was very, very bad. Nobody bought wood. There was barely any money. They were like so poor they didn't even have money to eat. Comes Sukkot and he doesn't have money to buy an etrog. Nevertheless, he took a little bit from here, a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and he bought an etrog. It wasn't a fancy one, but he still bought an etrog. And he walks into the home with a little bag. His wife hears the bag, making the noise of a bag. And she thinks, maybe he bought me a present. Or maybe something. And she looks in the bag, and what does she see? An etrog. Oh, she loses it. How dare you? How dare you buy an etrog? We don't have food on the table. The kids don't even have clothes. We have nothing. And you, pretending you're such a tzaddik, and you buy an etrog, you can't say the blessing on a different etrog that belongs to somebody else in the shul, the rabbi. She takes the etrog and she bites off the pitom, the pointy part of the etrog, makes the etrog completely pasul, not worthy for the mitzvah. This was a very great individual, and instead of answering back with anger, he looks up to the sky and he says, okay, I guess Hashem, I'm not supposed to have an etrog this year. And he was holding himself from getting angry. I mean, any other person will get extremely angry at that point. Nevertheless, that was a huge test for him, and he passed it. And when he walked into the Baal Shem Tov says the test that he had was as great of the test that Avraham Avinu had when he was about to sacrifice Yitzchak. And because of him, this power of this little action, yes, this big decree against our nation was removed. With this story, we understand that Yosef understood that the mitzvah or the sin affects the entire world. Doesn't matter if you are a Yosef or if you are a regular Moishele. That's what Yosef understands. And he brings it over in a way that we need to understand that. Rambam also says that, Maimonides says that one person can do one act of kindness and he will tilt the whole world to kafzchut, to a side of positivity. And one person can do one action and bring the redemption. Excuse me. There's a story that I heard not too long ago. I told a few times about a certain scientist, a very famous professor in America, Melville Green. And he's a very great professor. I think when NASA formed a group to research if there's any life force on Mars, he was one of the scientists that they recruited. I think they recruited like 5 or 6 scientists. Anyways, he's the man. He became observant, became orthodox, and he started, using his wisdom and his knowledge in science to advocate for the Torah. There's a story that one time he was invited to a radio show, him and another rabbi, and in the radio show, the host suddenly threw a question and totally confused them. And the question was, how can you explain in your faith, in Judaism, that if a person sins, he gets lashes. The punishment is to hit the person. What kind of a distorted way? I mean, don't you teach in your religion that we have free choice? So if you give free choice and the person chose to sin, why would you slap him on his hand? That doesn't make sense. That's the question that everybody asks. If you gave me free choice, why did you punish me? I understand that if you don't give me free choice, you punish me. But you gave me free choice. You can do good, you can do bad. If you do bad, I'll punish you. That's not free choice here. So the radio host tells the professor, how can you explain that in your religion? So the other rabbi, when there's not a good answer, then you start to give other answers. So he was giving all sorts of different answers to try to somehow, wipe it off to give some type of an excuse. So the answer that this professor gave, I think it was around the time, maybe a few years later, after they sent the space shuttle to land on the moon. Whether it ever landed or not, that's a whole different thing. Now the Russians are questioning it. The Russian says we're going to research if the Americans really landed on the moon. There's difference of opinions that it was all fake and it was all shot in a studio. It was at the time of the Cold War, the Americans and the Russians, everybody wanted to prove their power. Nevertheless, we're not going to argue about that. But the point is that the answer that he gave is, I don't know all the details, and I heard the story and I didn't write down the details. I just heard the story. And for what I remember, there was 2 space shuttles. The first one, I think, was the Apollo 1 that didn't even take off. It exploded on the takeoff, if I remember correct. But the next space shuttle actually made it. And the answer that he gave is that when the space shuttle was on the route and landing, constantly they had to report back to Houston. Houston, we have a problem, right? So I'm sure they kept telling them, now do this, now do that, now do this, now do that. Can you imagine if the pilot, the astronaut, will just take the radio and disconnect and says, I'm just doing whatever I want here? Would he be punished for that? Well, of course he would be punished for that. You're taking a $1 billion space shuttle, hundreds of men are working around it, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment and research, and you're doing what you want? This is public property. You are presenting the public. Therefore, we got punished. And that was his answer to the radio host, that if I do something and it affects the entire community, I deserve to be lashed. That's the answer in Judaism. Why would you give malkot? I mean, that's a punishment that we have in the Torah. Somebody does a sin, you get lashed, you get hit. And that's the answer. Because when I do something, I affect everybody. It's not only me. Some people say, leave me alone, it's my life. No, it's not. When you sin, you affect everybody. And when you affect everybody, I'm allowed to punish you, because you are now punishing everybody. So I'm allowed to punish you. And going back to the face of Adam HaRishon represents the entire mankind. It's not just representing the creation of Hashem. Adam HaRishon is representing all human beings. Yesterday in Shabbat we had this discussion when we talked about if I'm allowed to go against my brother, hate my brother, punish my brother. A question came out, what's a brother? One person said, a brother is us, we're Jews, we're brothers. And the conclusion was, no, it's any human being, we're all brothers. If you go back to Avraham Avinu, a lot of people that are Gentiles are my brothers. Coming from the same father, same thing with Adam HaRishon. So Adam HaRishon is representing mankind, humankind, everybody. It's not only me or only my nation. So the point to take from that is that when I hold up against a challenge and I'm not sinning, the entire world is benefiting from that. Not only me, not only my parents, not my mother and my kids. The entire world is now benefiting from my good action. That's what it's coming to teach me. What is holding Yosef from sinning? That the entire world is depending on him. That's what he understands. Because technically, like I said in the beginning, he has nothing to lose. He has technically no parents. His mother died and his father thinks he's dead. He has no family. He has nothing. What is holding him? The thought that if I sin right now, the entire world will get affected. Look what a noble thought. So now comes another question. That was a one-time thing. But what was holding him for 22 years? 22 years. So what was holding him for 22 years is the fact, I heard once a story that when Yosef HaTzadik was revealed to his brothers, when he told them, I'm Yosef, if you remember, he sent them back to bring Yaakov. And what did he send them back with? He sent them with all sorts of presents. But he also sent them with a certain wagon, and a wagon in Hebrew is called agala, which is the same word in Hebrew for egla. Egla is a young calf. And he wanted to hint to Yaakov that I still remember what was the last thing that we learned together. Egla Rufa. That's the law that the last Torah class that Yaakov and Yosef had. They were learning about the rules about Egla Rufa, about a young calf that gets the head chopped. And what's the message behind that law in the Torah? Is that when a person goes and represents the entire community, the heads of the community are responsible for what's going on with that person. If I'm going now to represent a community, for whatever reason, then the heads of the community, they have responsibility over me. Which means that I am going to present the community, they have to back me up. That's how it works in the Torah. So, not for nothing, that was the last thing that they learned. And that's the symbol that he sent Yaakov. That I remember, that was the last thing. Yosef, what was holding him for 22 years, that not only his actions are going to affect the world, that he has his father's back. That Rashi Ha'ir, the heads of the community, have responsibility over him. And that comes to teach us another thing, that sometimes I'm here to do something for the entire community, and I have responsibility. So the profound message that we need to take from that is that everything that I do affects everybody. You know, the other day, I was talking to a man. The man, there's all sorts of problems now with this certain individual. And I was trying to come across to this man and telling him, you know, you have to rectify what you're doing. He's going and spreading a lot of lies and lashon hara and all sorts of problems. And I told him, you have to stop with that. And his answer was, Ma zinyancha? What is it your problem? Who are you to come and tell me what to do? And I told him, because if you go down, I go down. It has a lot to do with me. And I told him, and vice versa. If I go down, you go down. We're all in the same boat. So of course it's my problem. When I see you doing a sin, it is my problem. Because if you go down, you take down with you everybody. There's a story in the Midrash about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that there was once a man, and he was in a big ship, and he was in the lower deck, and he wanted some fresh air, so he starts drilling a hole in the wall. And they're coming and telling him, are you out of your mind? What are you doing? He says, well, I need some fresh air. Fresh air? If you're going to make a hole in the wall of the boat, of the ship, water will come in and the whole ship goes down. And he tells him, mind your own business, it's my room, it's my cabin. What do you mean it's your cabin? The whole ship will go down. Of course it's our problem. Same thing here, and that's what I was telling this man. He's telling me, Mazin Yancha, what is it your business? I told him, what is it my business? Because if you bring us down, we all go down. So, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. We all are guarantors of each other. And if I see you sin and I don't say anything, then I'm the fool. And if I sin, don't you think that my action is going to affect everybody? It's responsibility for the entire community. It comes to teach me that my action is not only affecting me. Many times you're about to sin and your Yetzer Hara will tell you, it's okay, you'll deal with Hashem, Hashem loves you. So what if Hashem loves me? Maybe it will affect now the entire world. Same thing on the positive side. and I'm about to do something positive, and I really don't want to do that positive thing, is to say, wait a minute, the whole world will benefit from my action right now. And this is the whole message behind the idea, is how does a young man hold himself in such a temptation for 22 years? Is because he had the knowledge that every action that he does affects the entire world. And this is the message we want to take from that. And when you are placed in a situation that you're about to sin, take a stop and saying, who's going to suffer from this right now? Me, my mother, my kids, my wife. I'm saying my mother and kids because I said it in the beginning of the class. But everybody will suffer. Do you really want everybody to suffer because of me? Do you want to be the one that shows up in the heavenly court and saying, because of you, you're the one who pulled the plug and everybody went down? And that's a lot of responsibility. And on the other hand, how many times I'm about to do something good and I'm lazy, I don't want to show up, I don't want to come back, I don't want to do an action that is hard for me? Then if you have this thought of, wait a minute, my action right now can tilt the entire world to kav zchut. Maybe right now, I don't know what, the Iranians across the border want to barrage us with missiles, and with me now doing a certain action, I'll hold my tongue, I'm not going to say a lie right now, I'm not going to say lashon hara. Maybe that's going to be the power that stops our enemy from attacking us. How do you know? So each and every one of us is powerful. And you need to remember that you are powerful to both ways, both to the negative and to the positive. And when you carry with you this responsibility, you understand that your actions are huge. And that's why I said before, we have to make a sticker that small actions make a big difference. Don't underestimate your actions. Don't minimize your actions, both for the positive and to the negative. When you're coming to do something negative, don't think for 1 second, wait a minute, right now I can be saving people around the world. And I know it might sound like a little bit of an ego trip. Oh, I read now an hour Tehillim, I saved the world. Okay, good, read an hour Tehillim. It's not about an ego, it's about like, I want to do a change to the world. How many times you get an email or a text message, so-and-so is sick, please say Tehillim. Why would my Tehillim affect this little kid? Why? Because that's how it is. Because I'm taking on myself time now to read Tehillim or to do a mitzvah. Yes, it will affect somebody else. We see sometimes when we're in trouble as a nation, we're being attacked, everybody starts doing mitzvot. Yeah. Now many can argue and say it didn't help. Who says it didn't help? Maybe it helped a completely different thing. Maybe the Tehillim didn't help that person that is sick, but it helped the whole community on the other side of the world. So the message of this challenge that Yosef had to overpower is that we have to acquire it and understand that every action that I do makes a huge difference in the world. And that it is enough to inspire me to understand that if I can do a good action today, maybe it's going to be me that tilt the whole world to kav zchut and bring the redemption. And chas v'shalom, it can be me that tilts the world to a negative side, and Hashem merachem, what can that be? So I want to be the one that takes on myself any type of mitzvah, and whenever it's extremely difficult for me to do something, what motivates me is how many people will benefit from my mitzvah right now. Don't think it's coming from your ego that you are so great. It's not coming from your ego. You have to tell yourself right now, if I'm going to not do this, or if I'm going to do this action right now, thousands of people will benefit. Maybe the entire world will benefit because of my mitzvah. And we'll conclude this teachings of Yosef HaTzadik. Small actions make a huge difference.